So safety is one of those things that you always have to have at the forefront of your mind. And whether you have chemicals that are being mixed with other chemicals, or you have, sharp edges, or you have knives or saw blades, or all kinds of, dangerous things that are going on, you got to be concerned with safety, and you have to have safety at the forefront of your mind.
Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go-to destination for cutting-edge strategies, time-tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Niels, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concord University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. And in this week, or actually it's a continuation, it's a part two. So of the conversation that Nate and I had last week, we were having a conversation about the rewards of the construction industry. And just like anything, there's always two sides to any coin. And the other side is when you've got rewards, so there's going to be challenges too. And we always like to give fair airtime to everything, just for the fact that, hey, you might as well go into this eyes wide open. We're not about to go ahead and say, hey, everything's awesome in the industry and there's nothing you've got to worry about, because that's not the case in any choice that you make in life. So there's always things that are good and there's always things that may be more of a challenge for you. And that's what we're going to talk about this week. We did last time, we kind of went back and forth. So as far as seeing how many of these we could get named. And I'm going to go ahead and put the same challenge out to Nate again for this week. With the challenges, how many do you think we can go ahead and get on the challenge side of things? So for the industry.
Well, we got 15 last week.
15 rewards. Yep. 15 good things.
I'm going to say we can get 16 this week. I'm going to put one more on top of it.
One more. Get it. One more.
Yeah.
All right. That works.
Bring it up.
So, all right. That works. I'm up for that challenge. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
All right. You kicking off then?
Yeah, I'll kick it off.
All right.
So one of the biggest challenges that the industry is facing right now, and the challenge is labor shortage. And so that is probably the biggest challenge in the industry today, which is only a challenge for the people that are in it. The people that are wanting to come in it, you have free reign to come in and pick out what you want. But for the people that are in it,
right,
labor shortage is what I am screaming at the top of my lungs from the top of the mountain, trying to get anybody to understand and listen to, because these are the things that are affecting everything. And I'm sure in a later episode, we'll kind of go into kind of some statistics on labor shortage, but labor shortage is the number one, challenge that the entire industry is feeling. And it's not just construction. It's not just remodel. It's not just plumbers or electricians or framers or carpenters or pipe layers or tile guys. It's the entire industry. And then it goes into the next layer of industries where you're having guys that are doing, or ladies that are doing physical labor, or having to transport things from one place to the other, like warehouse work and things of that nature. So my number one is labor shortage by far.
And I'm right there with you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it's one of the things that Nate and I, one of the big things we connected on right away. So it was recognizing there is that shortage, and recognizing that then it also becomes down to getting people trained coming into the industry in the right way. Because over time, you start to lose the people who've been in the industry and have the knowledge and the tips and the tricks to make things easier, better, faster, across the board. And when you start to lose those people, if they're not handing their information down to the next generation, so that information becomes lost information. And that's a challenge. It's one of the reasons why we've gone ahead and created Concord University, because of that fact. That's part of that mission, is to be able to train people to a consistent level to be able to perform across the industry in a way that we're all happy with. So yeah, I definitely agree. Labor shortage. So it's huge piece. No question about it. Now here's what The first one that popped into my head, so on this stuff, Nate, and it's funny because it was one of the rewards too. So is technological advancements. So
Mm,
technology in this industry, and I only think that because of the fact that a lot of the people who have been in the industry for a long time, like I'm someone who brings new tech in all the time. Even just simple things like we go ahead and use Trello as one of the things that we use for job site communications and where we house our spreadsheets and things like that. Like we've got a system where we have QR codes for the color pages or color sheets that we have, and we put the QR codes on the job site because we can put those up in every room and makes it easy. Then whoever comes
mhm.
in just scans the QR code, knows what their stuff is that goes in there, and they know exactly what's going on. Like those technology pieces that you go ahead and start implementing, those are the simple ones. That's just the hey, you've got to learn how to use this. So even then, it's like you scan the QR code, you have to be able to read the spreadsheet then. And a lot of the people in the industry aren't familiar with spreadsheets if they've been in the industry for 30 years plus. So
Mhm.
that was never one of their strong suits. That may be one of the reasons why they're in the industry itself, which is fine. And it's getting them up to speed on that. And it's going to be the same thing like drones coming in, which means you have to have people that know how to fly a drone so you don't go ahead and smash it through something whenever it's out in the field, or any new equipment that you've got that's going to be out there, like we talked about, even like with the earth movers and things like that for the guys who do heavy equipment and things like that, like all of that stuff anymore is GPS. So
Mhm.
related. So you've got to know how to go ahead and get all those systems to work together effectively to be able to even operate the machine in the way it's supposed to be operated. So that's one of the challenges then is having people who are willing to accept that technology and embrace the technology even more so because it does make the job easier
Yeah.
overall. It's that change piece. So, and a lot of people are people, so they like what they know. They like doing things that they're comfortable with, and when you stretch them outside their comfort zone, sometimes there's some resistance to that.
Well, I will tell you that it is a big challenge for me personally. I
Hmm.
feel like I'm a young person with an old soul that came into this industry learning from dinosaurs. And I used to joke all the time that you give me a laptop, I'll figure out how to balance a table. And it was great back in the day because everybody would laugh, be like, "Oh yeah, that's a funny joke." And now I say it, and people look at me like, "How do you balance a table with a laptop?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't even make this joke anymore." And so it's been a challenge for me, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm still not good at technology, but I'm embracing it, and I
right.
take it in stride, and I find people around me that can help me with me.
Exactly.
Like I still haven't figured out how to forward my own emails. But I keep trying. I get all screwed up, and then I call in one of the guys, be like, "Hey, come in here," and he's like
Yeah.
22, and he comes in. He's like, "How do I fix this?" And he's like, "Move out of the way. Click, 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 and it's done."
Out the
So
door. Exactly. Yeah.
embracing it's probably the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like with people that come in and work for me is that they give me some slack and they understand like I didn't grow up in this world, right? I didn't grow up with an iPad and an iPhone in my hand when I was a baby. And so give me a little grace, right?
Yeah.
So but I'm right there with you. I think, technology advancements is a great thing,
Yeah.
but some people it takes a while to get caught up with the technology. And if we didn't start at the same starting spot, obviously there's some gaps that have to be filled.
Yeah. Agreed.
So mine's gonna be probably safety concerns, right?
Okay.
Because whenever you get onto a job, there's all kinds of dangerous things kind of going on around you, right? And you've got things that are moving and flying, and what I mean by flying, like literal things that are coming in
Literally
the air.
flying.
If
Yeah.
you've got a crane and you're lifting things and it's moving and all these things. So safety is one of those things that you always have to have at the forefront of your mind. And whether you have chemicals that are being mixed with other chemicals, or you have, sharp edges, or you have knives or saw blades, or all kinds of dangerous things that are going on, you got to be concerned with safety, and you have to have safety at the forefront of your mind at all times. So that is a challenge.
And definitely, and you're right, it's an inherent risk. So in the industry, there's always, no matter what position no matter what industry you're in, there's a certain amount of it. And you just have to be aware. And that's really the big thing. And I think one of the big challenges that happens when it comes to that safety piece is that even when you've been in the industry for a long time, the challenge is you can become lackadaisical with it.
Yeah.
And I always think of like me being up on a roof and that, whenever I was back in my 20s, I'd literally be running around on the roof and wouldn't think twice about it. Now, whenever I step onto a roof, so there's at least a little pause. And you become, and literally I start running through checklists of things to go ahead and keep myself safe while I'm up there. To make sure that I'm good, and I
Yeah.
pay more attention to those pieces now. And a lot of times when you hear about the accidents and stuff, it's because people get lackadaisical with the things that are out there for your safety.
Hmm.
And if you're not using them, so you can really, unfortunately, it can lead to tragic consequences, though, is what it comes down to. But yeah, I mean, it's just know what it is. So pay attention, have your proper safety equipment on. I mean, I do everything that you possibly can, and you're going to be okay. That was what it comes down to. As long as you follow those procedures as much as you can, and everyone that's on the job site's following those too.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we do safety protocols and safety meetings
Yep.
consistently. Um, because at the end of the day, we want everybody to be safe and not have to go to the hospital. That's always a
Exactly.
bad day.
Yeah, no matter what. Um, I think one of the big things now, and it popped into my head because of where we're at right now in the economy. So, in some uncertainty. So, with a lot of people
Mhm.
that are out there, so is something that could be a challenge in the industry is economic fluctuations, just the ups and the downs. So, of normal economies. And it's funny because we're saying this today, and we've had such a boom for such a long time. And there's so many people who have come into the industry like, oh no, it's always booming. Oh no, Nate and I have seen cycles. There's no question about it. And you just learn that that's part of the industry. And whenever it
Mhm.
comes down to it, whenever the economy does cycle, there's certain trades that we always say are really good to be in. You've got your trades like your HVAC guy, the air conditioning goes out in Florida in the middle of the summertime. It doesn't matter what it costs or where you're at financially, you'll figure out a way to get it paid for.
Yeah.
So certain industries like that are a little more resilient, so a little less sensitive to this. So, but I mean, for me as a contractor, you definitely get people that are paying more attention to the money and people who will put off doing projects because of the fact that
Oh
like,
yeah.
well, I just don't have it right now. And that's so you get in this industry, you get to know that. And it's one of the big things that I try to teach everybody is because when things are booming, I always love to see the business partners come rolling up in their brand new lifted up pickup trucks. So every bell and whistle that they can possibly have on it. And then the usual conversation is you are going ahead and putting money away for the rainy day, right? That
Exactly.
didn't all go into this vehicle, correct? So, because I know whenever everything happened, 2007, 2008, oh, you had people that lost, I mean, they lost everything because of the fact that they were living that way. They had bought all kinds of extra equipment that they truly didn't need because they had money. And it's like, hey, you got to plan for when things are going to change. So they will at some point. It's just that it's going to, the only thing is the degree of how much it actually changes. But it's definitely something, it's always better to plan for it and not ever need it. So than be set up the other way and be living right to the edge every day and have the typical economic fluctuation come in and you're like, oh darn. So and your whole life changes.
Well, it's one of the things that I don't know, I kind of go against the grain, right? So in the good times I squirrel away and in the bad times I spend like crazy.
Well, and that's and that part that you're talking about, that's the time where you can like, especially if you're buying equipment and things like that and trucks and if you're doing things like the grading and things like that, you go ahead and buy bobcats and front end loaders and things. You go ahead and buy the heavy
Yeah.
equipment, then you can get tremendous deals. So, but that's why you squirrel the money away
You squirrel it
during the
away. And then I'm even taking it one step further where I'm looking at hiring in the low times too, because you can get some great people that are in transition um between industries or between careers and really be able to pick them up and provide a life for them where you now have incentive to be able to pay for them. Whereas before they're comfortable in whatever role and responsibility that they're doing. But then
Mhm.
that sets you up for success for when
Huge.
you come back in, you already have good, solid, successful people ready to ramp back into the other side. So
I mean, it's
that's
it
how you look
what
at it.
Nate's talking about is like you're going out and finding A players. So that's what
Mhm.
happens because you'll have people that didn't plan for it. They've got to let their A players go.
Exactly.
It ends up being an opportunity for you and the opportunity for the A player because they get a new landing spot and they can come in and still continue to have a job and continue to work. And you get some great talent. So on
Hmm.
that side of things, so it's another reason why just be prepared. So know that these things can come, have that money set aside because you can do an awful lot of moves. That's literally where some of the most successful companies come from. So is being ready whenever that opportunity shows up, when the downturn shows up, because they're able to step into it. So hire the right people, buy the right equipment, go ahead, buy buildings and things like that that they wouldn't have normally gone ahead and bought because the world goes on sale. One of the big, like what Nate's talking about, is having that contrarian viewpoint. So is whenever things are going bad, that's whenever you should be buying the most. So is what it comes down to.
That's it. All right, let's see. Number 5. I'm gonna go with regulations. Those are always challenges. And that one's probably one because I've got one as a thorn in my side right now. And I'll just kind of give you a brief recap and because we were talking about this earlier, but
Mhm.
um so I've got a national home builder who's building a home and they're being held up by a city inspector on regulations because of the quality of lumber that was given to them for framing a house. And I won't
Mhm.
go into all the specifics, but the reality of it is that some of the challenges that you face is that you have to go through the red tape to be able to get
Yeah.
things accomplished. And part of that, is that you have building inspectors that have quite a bit of power, and then they're being controlled by a board or city manager who's then setting regulations in place, whether they're warranted or not. They have that authority to then set the regulations, and then the inspectors have to follow regulations, and then the people that are doing it. So there is challenges within those regulations that you have to overcome. And
Mhm.
so, especially if you start getting into environmental regulations, where we're talking
Yeah.
about before,
Huge.
having environmental impact on communities,
Mhm.
can be high regulation kind of components. So I think regulations as a whole is a challenge, and then I think if we go deeper, getting into environmental regulations, could be another big challenge all to itself. So those are.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that side. I mean, I know for a lot of stuff that we do, since we've got so much water down here, whether
Uh-huh.
it's lakes and or being out on the Gulf or on the ocean, there's a whole different set of rules. So to go with that, with the lakes, the rivers, I mean, and those are things that you want to pay attention to, and they're always changing, is what it comes down to. And there's been times where we haven't built something on a lake or done any renovations on a lake in a year or two in a certain area, and then all of a sudden you go in there and it's like, holy cow! So you feel like you just got left behind, is what ended up happening. And you did, to a certain degree. So because
Hmm.
they change so fast, and they don't necessarily change across the board, they can change specifically in a municipality, let alone
Yeah.
across the county or even the state. So there's so many different moving parts. It's a constant piece that you've got to stay on top of thing. Even in two communities that are beside each other, you may have entirely different rules.
Yeah.
All right. So I would say one of the big things that people, when they think about construction and the construction industry, is a lot of a lot of this is outside or outdoors, meaning outside of conditioned working conditions, which a lot of people, if you love working in air conditioning and heated spaces that are nice and comfortable for you, this is not the industry, guaranteed. In Florida, we don't get the extreme cold, although for all of us down here, you get in the 30s or 40s, that's considered extreme cold for us. But whenever it comes down to, we get the heat, there's no question about it. You're in the 90s, you've got high humidity. So, and that's 6 months of our year. So, not to mention the storms that come through and things like that. You've got to be able to go ahead and, and if you're up when I lived in the Northeast, you get the cold weather. So, and you get the all day rains, whereas down here, typically the rain blows in and blows out. It's just different working conditions is what it comes down to. And that weather, so it does affect you, especially if you're in one of the outdoor trades. So if, the framers, the concrete guys, the roofers, the exterior finishes people. So all of those people are definitely affected by that. Some of the interior trades can get away with it without as much. Even then, though, most of them set up outside as far as their workspace goes. So it still goes ahead and affects you. Definitely something to consider. So whenever you're coming in this, you've got to be able to handle that. So as long as you can. So, and that's actually for me, it's one of the things that I like, because it's being outside. That's something that for me is a draw. For some people, they don't. If they're a person that you want, like I said, you want AC or you want heat all the time and to be that perfect 70 whatever degrees it is for you, um, this is not going to be the industry for you. So no question about it.
Well, weather's always a challenge. And I'm like you. I enjoy being outside. I mean, it's one of the perks for me. So,
Yep.
but with that being said, I am constantly watching the weather.
Mhm.
I have got two weather apps that I watch and look
Yeah.
at probably 3 times a day, right?
Uh,
My local weather and kind of what's going on there, like where I'm at specifically, what's going on with my job site.
yep.
But then I also have another app called My Radar where I'm watching storms as they're moving and coming
Mhm.
in, and like, is this going to be here in 2 hours? Is this going to be here
Right.
in 10 hours? What do I need to get covered? What do I need to get protect? Because when
Mhm.
you're working with, outside, being able to look and guide the weather and kind of be ahead of it is a big part of the game. And so um, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge I like fighting. So
Mhm. And Nate's right with the tools that are out there now. See, Nate does it. Go ahead and embrace
I'm telling you,
technology.
I'm coming along. I'm coming along.
But that's it. Having the apps like that, I'm the same way Nate is. I've got one that gives you the weather forecast, and I've got another one that's the radar. And we're always, especially as storm season comes down here, because you can't predict it. A lot of times you can see how it's moving across, and it's like, all right, you have another half an hour before you better go ahead and get things covered up, wrapped up, so put away, whatever the case might
Secured,
be.
tied
Yep,
down. Yeah.
exactly. So, all right, you're up, Nate.
Um, well, if we're going to go with the complexity of weather and how we interact with that, let's go with project complexity. You know,
Okay. What do you mean?
sometimes sometimes you have more than one project going on at a time, and sometimes you got
Sometimes
to
you
be
better
able.
have more than one project going on at the time, or you're not going to be in business too long.
Good point. So you got to be able to juggle these different projects and at these different stages of the project. And you're dealing with scope and scale, and you're dealing with material and labor, and you're dealing with, your weather conditions. And there's a lot of project complexity that kind of comes into each one. And when you have multiple ones, you're going into multiple complexity issues,
Yeah.
and so you have to be flexible and you have to be able to um, absorb all of this information and make the right decisions. So project complexity is another big challenge that I think everybody faces.
And definitely, I agree with you when it comes to the jobs. And it's like in Nate and I's positions, there's a lot more that we actually take on ourselves, meaning that we're watching what's going on, even when we have team that's managing the details on the job site in the day. So we're the ones looking at the big picture of how do all these pieces fit together? How do we maneuver labor effectively to make everything happen? Because whenever you're running, 6, 7, 10 jobs, and everybody needs an electrician today. And your electrician is a three-man company that are not going to be in all those places. So it's not possible.
Yeah.
So you start figuring out, all right, which one can I get in that they can either move the fastest or which one needs to be in the house because that one has to get done just because that project is a higher priority for getting taken care of. It definitely takes some time and planning. And with that project complexity, a lot of times will come some stress. So that's just what ends up happening. So you've got to be able to handle that part too. So. All right. One of the big things that we've seen, and we always see this in the industry, there's some things that they bring out as the latest and greatest thing in the industry. So, and then find out that it's not the greatest thing. It might have been the latest thing.
Yeah.
And like what I'm thinking of here, so there's difference is aging and infrastructure, I guess is kind of our aging in products so that are involved. And I think like we just did a big renovation in an area called College Park in Orlando, older community. So a lot of houses being redone right now. And wherever you got to redo those houses, a lot of them had cast iron pipes for the sewer
Hmm.
lines and everything like that. And it's like, I'll get homeowners that'll go ahead and say, well, they know about it because it's been publicized enough. So the cast iron can be a challenge. And it's one of those pieces where will it break down over time? And guaranteed it'll break down over
Yeah.
time. It's just what is that amount of time? Whenever you look at it. And we were doing a big renovation in College Park, and we were redoing the whole house. We were reconfiguring multiple things, and it's like they're like, "Well, do we need to worry about this?" And we're like, "You have the house ripped up now. This is your chance to go ahead and do it and just be done with it." And it's you go ahead instead of going ahead and leaving the cast iron pipes, we went ahead and replaced them. So with PVC, because obviously that's the latest and greatest, and has been for a long time now as far as that part goes. And don't have the same deterioration challenges like the cast iron does over time. But whenever you start looking at things like that for aging infrastructure, that becomes a challenge because, just going ahead and redoing those pieces. I also think of when since we're talking plumbing,
Hmm.
polybutyl plumbing lines. So we're the latest and greatest at one point to replace copper, supposedly.
Yeah.
And copper is still here. And
Yeah.
the polybutyl by the insurance companies, they're making you rip it out if you've got it and they know about it. So if you go to buy a new house and you've got polybutyl plumbing, they'll make you repipe or make you or have you talk to the seller about the house being repiped. So before they'll go ahead and insure the house. And those are just some of the things that end up happening. That's on the residential side. I mean, on the commercial side, you look at things like bridges and roads and things like that. Those things are
Mhm.
always breaking down, just because they're out in the weather. So they're being utilized. So they're going to break down. So that aging infrastructure, it's a good thing because
Huge.
it means there's always things for us to do. So, but
Yeah.
it's a challenge for the industry in itself because obviously we're looking to make things, and I know part of our goal is to give something for my homeowners that's the lowest maintenance possible and lasts the longest in the condition that we install it originally. So those are some of the big pieces that we always look at whenever it comes down. So that aging infrastructure just creates challenges on both our end and their end.
Yeah, I think aging infrastructure is probably one of the biggest challenges that any r- remodel or reconfiguration or renovation that's going
Mhm.
on. That's one of the biggest issues that you face because you are taking something that's been used and probably been abused during its life
Yeah.
cycle. And so now you have to fit it in with the new technology because the old technology is no longer available.
Right.
And so I think it's a great challenge to go kind of
Yeah.
overcome. All right, what are we on? Number nine.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we're at 9 now. So that sounds
Uh,
about
you know, workplace diversity, I think, is another challenge. And
right.
this isn't a political kind of component when I say
You,
diversity, but
you DEI me, Nate.
no, no, I'm just kind of giving you the overhead, right? The workplace diversity, meaning you have to work with different people, right? And sometimes that's a challenge, right? And especially if you speak different languages and you don't speak the same language or you don't understand the same words. And so, plumbing is different than electrical and framing is different than drywall and painting is different than, concrete, right? So you have all of these diversified people coming together to create one project or to work on one project together, and each one has their own kind of crews and people that they work with on a regular basis and communication. And so sometimes they have to interact with one another and they might be of different nationality. They might be, have different languages. They might have, these different things. And so getting all of these different people to work together and to understand each other is a challenge. I know that I've faced it
Yeah.
multiple times where, and this is kind of how I had to end up learning that different countries and different cultures don't really like each other, right?
Don't
And
mix.
so, and it has nothing to do with the project. That just happens
Yep.
to do with whatever happened previous in their lifetime.
Hmm.
And being able to come and be a mediator was the challenging part in that situation. But you get multiple people on the same project.
Hmm.
There is some diversity there, and you have to recognize it and just say, "Hey, look, we might all be different, but we're all coming together for one common goal, which is to get this project done and everybody to get paid."
Yep.
And so being able to put aside our differences is a challenge sometimes.
And you're right. It can be at. I remember you were talking about how you've acted as that
Yeah.
mediator. So either way, between that, and it's funny because where I grew up, the majority of the Hispanic population came from one country. So
Hmm.
whenever I was growing up, when I moved to Florida, you had a multiple different Latino communities coming together. And one of my first job sites I was on down here, yeah, you had the painters were one ethnicity. So, and then it was the painters and the stucco guys. So were the other, and they were two entirely different. And it's like they had it's not like they had beef with each other because they had never even worked on the same job site together at the same time. So
Yeah.
yet they came in with that challenge of whatever's happened in their history, what they've learned, what's been passed down to them. And it's like it's the get it all working together. I mean, and same thing, like I'm in the South now. So you've got the good old boys down here, the rednecks, as we call them in the state of Florida. So with those rednecks, so yeah, they didn't like the fact that everybody else was coming in and stealing their job. They didn't want the jobs.
Yeah.
You could offer it to them. They weren't going to do that job for that amount of money, which means they can't do the job because at that point we can't go ahead and effectively work as a company and have
Yeah.
customers because the prices get too high. And that's one of the biggest things is that everybody is working towards that goal as long as everyone has that what's best for the customer, what's best for the company. So in mind as they're going ahead and doing this. So we're all on the same team.
That's
Oh, and
it.
it's going ahead and getting everyone to realize that. So yeah, I agree. So the diversity piece and really bringing everybody together and being able to work together. So it was one of the big challenges that can happen here.
Mhm.
And it's one of the things that you think of like when you think of construction managers, you never think I've got to also be a psychologist at times, because you do,
And a
or a social
babysitter,
worker. So yeah, babysitter. Yeah.
psychologist, and a babysitter,
Priced babysitter. Yeah, exactly.
and a referee.
Yeah.
So,
As long as you don't have to become the bouncer, everything's okay.
yeah, that's
At
it.
least for me at my size, Nate's a bit bigger, so him being the bouncer not the worst thing in the world. So me at 5'6", yeah, it could be a challenge. All right. So let me think. I'd say, one of the things we kind of talked about this a little bit already, is that the education and training, which is constantly evolving. So in the industry, and it's one of the pieces where I always chuckle whenever I hear the guys that have been in the industry for like 30 years. Well, it's the way I've been doing it for 30 years. Well, I get it. And can it work? Yes. You think there might have been some innovation in the last 30 years that might make things a little bit better, a little bit faster, a longer lasting quality product for our homeowners. And it's definitely one of the pieces that you've always got to be looking, and things are always changing. I mean, like Nate
Yeah,
was on whenever we were talking about the rewards on the last podcast. So he was talking about some of the technology, and it's not even technology, it's just the innovation, like shark bites. So on
yeah,
the plumbing side of things. Well, if you don't believe in those and you don't realize how to go ahead and use those, you could have a couple different challenges. I mean, part of it ends up becoming you won't even look for it. So you're going to do it the old way. And a lot of times it's a lot faster and a lot better to go ahead and use something like the shark bite. Yet at the same time, if you're not trained on that and get the education on how to do it, I literally
yeah,
had yesterday on one of my job sites, the guys had put shark bites on to go ahead and cap a couple things off. And we turned the water on before we left at the end of the day, so that the homeowner had water throughout the weekend. We turned it on and it didn't blow off, but it was blowing a boatload of water out of that because he didn't press the shark bite down until you hear the snap. So,
yeah,
which is when it's actually seated. And that's
yep,
whenever I walk back in, I'm like, did you put it down until you heard a pop?
yeah,
He's like, I don't remember. So and I'm like, all right. So he put it on and he felt the pop whenever he's putting it on. He's like, I felt the pop that time. I'm like, it's seated now. You don't have to worry about it again. We'll turn the
yeah.
water back on. But yeah, and that's the thing is just that education. And then
Mhm.
in that case, it has to be one of two things: either someone on the team, so who is the person who's in charge of bringing the new things to the company and teaching everybody, or if no one's doing that, you got to take it on yourself. Be
Yeah.
accountable, learn your industry, become the expert in your trade. There's so many different ways to do that now. So whether it's Concord University, whether it's YouTube, so whether it's, just going ahead and going to, like, we have the Southeast Builders Conference coming. And I think it's next month, if I'm not mistaken. So there's one that's coming to Orlando. I mean, all those little things like that, you can go and learn more on your own. So about what's going on in your industry to help raise your level.
Well, and I think one of the other issues that hasn't really been brought up about it, with the training and education piece is that
Mhm.
we're now at a point where the construction industry is evolving so rapidly that, you know, this year to next year, there could be product changes, there could be,
Yeah.
building code changes and things of that nature that you got to get caught up on. And I
Mhm.
was one of those dinosaurs, be like, "Look, I've been doing this forever, blah, blah, blah." But
Mhm.
then I started going to a bunch of different trade shows over, the last decade, and I started realizing that the industry is moving at a fast rate, and there's a lot of technology that's coming in, and I don't really have the time to dive into every single piece of it.
Yeah.
So you have to pick and choose, like, what are you going to learn and
Mhm.
when, and how is that going to be impactful kind of going forward with your skills and your training and your knowledge? Because you got to fit it in and you can't learn everything all at once. So be strategic in how you
You
go
can't.
through the education and training. Yeah, I
I
know.
can't learn it all at
I,
once, Nate.
I can't. I'm still waiting for that Elon Musk like
A
brain
little
piece
chip in
where
your
you can
head.
just doaldownload all the information into your head and they'd be like, "Oh, I
the
already
whole
got it."
the whole Matrix piece, they just
The
plug
whole
you in and
Matrix,
upload you with
right?
the
Like
latest
just
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that one.
All right, so I think that gets us through number 10. So based
Okay.
off of the goal you set at the beginning of this, Nate, we got at least 6 more to go ahead and pull up of
Oh, we can do
challenges.
that.
All
We
right.
can do it. Another one for another challenge that I'm facing currently is supply chain issues. It's one of those things ever since we hit, COVID in 2020.
Mhm.
Supply chain issues have been at the forefront of challenges for everybody. And
Right.
you would think by now that we've gotten through, I mean, what was that, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And we're still dealing with supply chain issues. And
Mhm.
so manufacturing companies have shut down, limited amount of companies that are providing the same materials. One of them is that we don't have enough lumber yards producing different types of lumber in different places. So we're limited on the amount of lumber that we can get and the types of lumber we can get. We're limited on different types of poly that we can get,
Yep.
polyplastics. We're limited on different types of, cultural marble pieces and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So manufacturing has dwindled, and as manufacturing has dwindled, production has ramped up. And so raw materials are getting harder to get a hold of. Supply chain issues have become just a major, component. They're still making it. It's not like it's going out of business,
Right.
but it's more difficult to be able to get there. And with the innovations that are coming and the production lines, and it's like faucets. You would think that, I can just go down and buy a faucet and everything's fine. But you can't. I've got backlogs on faucets that are 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks because they haven't been made yet. And
Yep.
so, it's kind of like we're in this weird supply chain issue. And so um that is a big challenge. So
It's definitely one of those things. And I agree with you. COVID started it. And I know one of the things that we did is like I got with all of my guys, all my trades, so and all the ladies, and I'm like, what do we need to do? So how are we gonna go ahead and plan for this? And it's like, that I'll use the AC guy as an example for us. So he's like, well, they've got, for projects that are coming up, they've got the air handler and the condenser right now. So if we can buy them now, which means we need to pay for them up front,
mhm.
before we would typically have our draws coming in from our homeowners. But if we go ahead and buy it up front, then we also need to have a place to keep it. And that's the other thing is, in some of the projects we had those spaces. So, but
Yeah.
it's knowing those types of challenges, and I would like to say that it's only in one industry, but that tends to roll. So different
Mhm.
industries have different challenges at different times. And it's one of the reasons why in the industry, you've got to stay in close contact with your business partners, your subcontractors, and then all of your suppliers and things like that, because they'll start to let you know it's happening before it becomes a full-blown crisis. And that's one of the biggest things, like, well, when we actually talked about with market fluctuations and things like that, like whenever we go ahead and squirrel away money, one of the things we end up doing is whenever we see something like that happening, we go ahead and order everything that we're going to need for multiple jobs right away. So, and then figure out where we house it. So while we're doing that, and some of the times they'll keep it for you there. So depending on your supplier and depending on their warehouse and how much space they've got, but it definitely can throw a big hiccup in, because all you need is one thing that's a key item that you're unable to get a hold of that can literally dead stop a job. So it definitely can happen.
Yeah.
All right. Regulatory compliance, which basically, whenever I say that type of thing, means how you work with the municipalities so that you have to work with, which for us is the building departments and, well, health department too, whenever you're dealing with septic and things like that, at least in the state
Sure.
of Florida, and your water department. So, but all of those different pieces, one of the biggest challenges we have, and I would love if this would actually go, because we have an international building code. So
Yeah.
there's actually a code that's supposed to be utilized everywhere. Where the challenge is each municipality goes ahead and interprets it differently. So, and
Or
only
or or they can pick what year of code
year.
they
That's what I was
that
about
they
to
want
say.
to
Yeah,
use.
which version they're using. So is what it comes down to. And that ends up becoming the challenge, because then you're playing a guessing game. Like if we could all get on one level playing field of this is what the rules are, everybody play by this, it would be so much easier. Like
Mhm.
even like homeowners always ask me, like whenever we're talking this, the biggest area this hits, there's two big areas. One is in the beginning in the permitting process, and then
Mhm.
the second one is during the inspection process in the field. And on the permitting process, like if you could all get on the same page, have the same exact thing submitted in the same way, then it becomes easy for my staff to be able to go ahead and send everything in. It's literally every county, sometimes cities inside of counties that do their own inspections have different sets of rules, different ways things are being submitted. And it's like you have to learn every one every time, because unless you're doing, like, certain counties, we're doing consistent work. And so we're pretty much up on what's going on in those counties as they change. So, but we had one, I've got a county down here. interior renovations, you still have to turn a site plan in. I'm not affecting the outside of the house in any way, shape, or form. Not doing anything to it, not even touching a bush on the
Yeah.
outside of the house, let alone adding on. Yet they now require a site plan whenever we go ahead and do anything. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Do they make
So
it? Do they make it so you have to have an architectural stamp on it, or
no, they've thankfully said as long as you've got the survey, they'll let us sketch it on there. So of where it's actually going. I'm like, it's inside the house. What does it matter? So it's like I got this little square inside of the house. So
yeah?
of where we're doing this bathroom renovation. I'm like, all right, well, it suits your and literally what it comes down to, unfortunately, is, and this goes to a bigger topic, and we're not going to dive into this right now. So, but the fact that they've
It's one of
got
the
a little
thorns that are on my
checkbox.
side. By the way,
Yeah. So you've got that little checkbox that the person at the county or the city has to go ahead and check for it to pass on to the next person to be able to actually look at. And if they are unable to check that, it gets stopped there until they get whatever they feel they need. And the lack of common sense that this is in, like in my case, an internal renovation. So as far as that goes, an interior renovation where we're not doing anything on the outside of the house, that's obvious then. So to check the box, or put NA the box either way, that it's not applicable. And that creates frustration in this. And homeowners will ask me all the time, how long is it going to take to get through permitting? I would love to give you that answer. So, but every time, if the rules are the same, it should be this. So yet it changes on that. And of course, how busy they are, which I totally get that on their end. So how many other permits they're working on, but that whole piece of that regulatory compliance just drives me up a wall.
well, I know I want to say something. I know it's going to get me in trouble in the future, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Only when the county start watching this.
Oh, somebody's going to forward this on to every county person I know. But I truly believe that in order to be able to be hired, to be able to have one of those positions, they have to go into the future into that movie Idiocracy. Have you seen that one where they go and
No.
as you get further down the road in life and evolve, you get stupider all the way down. And it's back to the point where, there's a point in the movie where they're talking about, trying to get plants to grow and this whole piece. And they're going, well, what do you put on the plants? We go, well, we put, I can't remember the name of it. It's like Gatorade or something like that. And it's like, and they were like, well, why do you do it? Because it has electrolytes. Because it has electrolytes. And they're like, why don't you just put water on it? He's like, from the toilet? And they're acting like it's all like this nasty thing. It's like, no, you just put water on the plants and watch them grow. No, we put electrolytes on the plants. Anyways, long story short, you almost have to be like 2 stages ahead of like mentally, legally allowed to vote in order to get a job with the city on that level where you can't pass or make common sense decisions. I know that's going to get me in trouble in the future, but that's how I truly feel in this moment in time.
And if you talk to any builder and they're being honest with you, every one of us will feel the same way.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
I mean, they just can't make, intelligent decisions to check boxes. I don't know. It is what it is. Which leads me into my next challenge. The next challenge that we face as an industry, or at least as I face as a company, is technology integration.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is the software that we use in order to kind of go through the project. And some of that is easy and you can do it and there's no problems. And others you have to manipulate and you have to enter in and you have to kind of go through these pieces. It's a challenge because you have to train them, and we are moving fast as an industry and we are getting a lot of new technology and these different things. And all of these things have to communicate with one another. So that technology integration that you have to bring in, like your CRM system, like your scheduling system, like your billing system, and all these different things have to come into more than not a software system today. And so getting all these things connected, talking to each other, and then training everybody to use it appropriately is a challenge. And so it's one of the ones that we face, and had a meeting last week, and guys have been doing things one way, which isn't the way that they're supposed to do it. But then they're like, oh, well, I didn't even know that was possible. And so it's like, all right, let's go do our education and our training class because we got to bring you up to speed. So that is a challenge.
No, and Nate's right. There's so much now that comes in, so many different software, so many different tools that you're able to go ahead and utilize. Yet you've got to be able to make them all work effectively together and create the processes for your team on how to do what and what they. Because if not, you've got literally it's the Wild Wild West. You've got one person doing it this way, the office person doing it that way. So you're looking at it to be done in the third way, and it's like everybody's looking at it going, they don't understand why the other person's doing it this way because it's like this is the way you're supposed to do it. Getting those everyone on the same page is huge. So, and that's definitely, actually that leads to my next one for challenges. So is because outside of the team that you've got in the office and using that piece like we were talking about, you also have managing client expectations, I guess would be a good
Mm,
way to put it.
yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes down to now, and this is a good thing and a challenge. Well, it's a challenge. So as far as on the builder side of things, it's a good thing for the homeowners. Is they're a lot more knowledgeable now as far as being able to research something
Hmm.
because there's so many more resources out there they can find out about a lot of things, which is great. The challenge ends up coming on the building side of things is you've got to realize that, which means you need to know what you're talking about. You can't BS your way through stuff because they're going to go ahead and check you on the backside, and then you're going to step into a trap. So is what it boils down to. I had one of this is like pre the crash of 2007, 2008. I had a homeowner there who was a doctor, and we were building a custom home for him. And he came with so many questions. And it's funny because there's different stages in life that you look back on like this. And he's one of the ones who really he pushed me to go ahead and make sure that I knew what I was talking about and
Hmm.
actually had all the details that went with it. Because he was very detail oriented. He would go ahead and search me. There was no question about it. If I told him something, he'd go ahead and he would have already searched it and then asked me a question about it. So, or he would go ahead after I gave him an answer, go back and search it to make sure my answer made sense with what information he was able to go ahead and put together. So that client expectation is raised up for you being the expert. So, and the other part that really goes with that, and something that we make a point of doing at our company, and it's a challenge though, because in the industry on its whole, the reason why we do it so well and it's to such a high degree is because of the fact that we're making sure everybody else is giving us the information we need is being able to communicate with our homeowners, our clients.
Hmm.
Because whenever you do that effectively, one of the worst things you can do as in this industry or in any industry, so is not communicate with your clients so effectively and timely. And that's one of the big things that I always tell my teams. So, for my business partners and things like that, it's like, if you're going to be late, let me know you're going to be late. I'll relay the information to the homeowner. And
Yeah.
like one of my favorite sayings, is I don't know whether you're going to make this the good news or the bad news, but I will deliver the news no matter what. So, and I'm going to give you the information. You're the only one that determines whether it's good or bad. So I'm going to let
Hmm.
you know what's going on. And that to me, is what I do that. My homeowners appreciate that, which means that I need to be on top of my subcontractors to go ahead and get me the information I need to effectively communicate that to the homeowner, and they're in the know. That communication in today's world is huge. And I'll
Huge.
say this, it's one of the things that you just don't in our industry. One of the pieces that people who are in our industry were never very good at, though, is communicating. And now you're getting people who are coming in, like for Nate and I's generation. So, we had to communicate. Like I remember the holidays when you went to the grandparents or the great grandparents and stuff, and you had to sit down and talk to them because there was nothing else that you were able to do.
Yeah.
You learned how to go ahead and communicate with everybody. And in today's world, we joke around on the holidays with my daughter and her, some of her cousins. That's exactly it. The phone is they're literally sitting across the table from they're texting each other because you'll see one text, then the other one will they start giggling.
Yeah.
So as it comes down to, it's like they're right there.
Yeah.
Just
Bring us include. We would have laughed too.
right. That's exactly it. But handling those client expectations, and they, like I said, from the amount that they know, and then they know what to expect to what you're communicating with them, so is huge. And it's a piece that you want to sharpen that skill. So
Yeah.
whenever you get in this, because the better you are at that skill, so the more successful you're going to be all across the board on the communication side of things, no ifs, ands, or buts, and on making sure you know what you're talking about. If you don't know, let them know you don't know. I'll have to find out and I'll get back to you. So
Yeah.
it comes out of my
That's
mouth
it.
more often than I want it to come out of my mouth, but it's because things are changing so often.
Well, it's one of the things that I actually measure in our company is kind of like our level of success with a project comes down to how well did you set up the client's expectations and
Mhm.
how well did you follow through with those expectations without any hiccups? And
Right.
those two things are what helps me minimize some of these challenges because The client's expectation is probably the biggest component for successful rebusiness on the back end of it. And
Question.
so that's what makes it all great.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely agree. You're right for that rework, for that referral. So for
Mm-hmm.
them having you come back and do the next thing at their home. So the more effectively you communicate, take care of them. So they're a lot happier because most of them have experienced someone who hasn't done that well. And you stand out. It's like we always talk about, it's the little tiny things that no one thinks about are the things that make the biggest difference to our clients. So
Yeah.
that's one of the small things right there.
Yeah.
All right, Nate, we're 2 away from hitting the goal that you set of 16.
All right.
You gonna get
Well,
there?
yeah, I think I'm going to have to go back to one that I said was a reward and also put it down as a challenge.
All
And
right.
it's physical demands, right? So in the reward, you get an opportunity to be physical and to
Mm-hmm.
work out and get your exercise in.
Right.
But also, it's also a challenge because you go through muscle fatigue as you're working out too much, or you're walking too much, or you're going through this whole physical aspect of it, where
Right.
you know you keep a bottle of aspirin in the truck, right? And you're just like, oh, okay, I walk 10, 12,000 steps today. My lower hips, my back, my knees are, I need a little bit more anti-inflammatory, right? And but physical demands are a real thing that can, yes, it helps prolong your life and you're going forward, but it also can be physically demanding and you get tired. And so, but knowing that challenge on the front end will help you kind of like navigate that storm. So,
I agree. And it's one of those pieces more between when you know that that's going to be part of this industry, no matter which trade you're in, you can prepare yourself by keeping yourself in better physical shape, no question about it,
mhm.
and keeping that as part of the focus of your life. And then at the same time, you can also be looking at opportunities where how do I go ahead and use more of my mind as I get older and my body starts to go ahead and not respond the way it used to when I was younger. How can I go ahead and use my mind to be able to do more things in the industry? So it gives you those opportunities to be able to step in there, but know that there are ways to go ahead and take care of that. So you just have to be on top of those pieces and look and you're looking into the future for how you want to go ahead and make it work for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So number 16, and this is one of the pieces that I had this conversation with, this is probably 10 years ago now. Holy cow. Sat down with one of my plumbers, one of my electricians, and one of my HVAC guys. And one of the conversations we had, and we've been, all of us, Nate included, have been seeing this coming for a long time with worker shortage, labor shortage coming in. So it's like, all right, how do we go ahead and plan to make this effective still? So, because as people are getting older, and we talked about this before, as they get older and they start aging out, a lot of that knowledge leaves with them if they're not still involved in the industry, if it hasn't been dispensed to the next generation of people coming up. And one of the things that we looked at was, hey, it may come down to things like more remote work, meaning, hey, you've got a really knowledgeable person. So they may be sitting in the office and they may be the data person or the call center, the help person for the guys that are out in the field or ladies that are out in the field looking to go ahead and do the work. And they may not have the experience. They may be calling in on FaceTime or on Zoom or something along those lines. So where someone can actually see what's going on and they can show them the challenge and that person can go ahead and take care of guiding them. So on that side of things, now that's going to lead back to a couple of different things Nate's talking about on the technology side that he's already mentioned is how to integrate those pieces like that. And it's how do you go ahead and do enough of that? Like for me, whenever I look at that, it's like Paige, who's one of my project managers, can go ahead and send pictures or a video, and I can usually know what I'm looking at by looking at it. So, but it's even still just coordinating that, making it effective, knowing that's a tool there for them to go ahead and utilize. So to go ahead and get the other opinion that they may want in an area where they haven't dealt with it before, or they may already have a decision and they may just want that affirmation. So that yes, that's what I would go ahead and do, or that confirmation as opposed to affirmation. That confirmation, that's what I would go ahead and do also. So that they feel good about moving forward. And it's how to go ahead and bring those pieces together. And like when you're in a city, it's usually less of a challenge. We get job sites that are out in the middle of no man's land. So when you're out there, that communication piece, when they're doing remote work like that, you may not even be able to get a hold of them through a lot of the day. And that
Yeah.
can create challenges too on how to get information out to them effectively. Hey, so and so is going to be later. They're not coming at all. We need you to come back, type of thing. Those types of things happen. And it's challenges that are involved in the industry for sure. And I think there'll be more solutions that come in the next 10 years for sure. So, but I think there's also going to be some new challenges that show up there. So that we're going to need to work through.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of our biggest challenges is remote communication. It's because, we get into areas where we don't have satellite and we don't have Wi-Fi and we don't have internet and we don't have phone signal and we don't have ways to communicate in the office. And, and even in the office, we're starting to make that transition into remote office kind of
Mhm.
personnel, right? And they might have issues where they're at, which that's also another thing.
Mhm.
We currently have somebody that's living in Kentucky and working for us in Texas, right? So,
Mhm.
they're answering phone calls there, they're communicating, but what
Right.
happens when they have a storm that knocks out power or knocks out
Mhm.
this, and now they can't communicate with the guys in the trade or out in the field, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of these remote pieces that kind of come into a problem, and it kind of comes back to how well you set up and tee up a project on the front end so that people can continue to work. But I think it's going to be a challenge that's going to have to overcome here pretty soon.
No question. Well, Nate, we got the 16.
I
We
think I got
stopping
one
now, or are
more.
you going to go ahead and hit a
I,
bonus or
I
two?
I got one more,
Yeah.
and then if you got one more, great. But I got one more.
All right, you go for your one more.
All right, work-life balance
What's
as a
that?
challenge, and the problem that it's a challenge is that you have more work than you have time to live life. So take advantage of it when you have the time to do it. It's what we call make hay when the sun's out, right?
Yep. Always.
So there is so many opportunities that are available, and you got to find a balance between your work life
Mhm.
and your personal private life with kids and
Yeah.
family and things of that nature. You might not start off that way, but at some point in life, you're going to get to a point where it's more than you, and and you have to spend quality time with the people that you love and that you're around because that's the whole reason why you're going to work. So it is a challenge to find that balance. I know that I struggle with it all the time because there is more things for me to do than there is time in the day, and I still
Yeah.
need to sleep. And so that is a challenge, but it is like we all say, it's a good challenge to have, and
Mhm.
so or a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, that's my work life balance.
And you're definitely right in this industry. And I will say this too, as labor becomes shorter and shorter, meaning there's less and less of it,
Hmm.
that work-life balance is going to become the piece that can really be a huge issue. So for anyone in the industry, because the demand, like Nate's already talking about, the demand's always there. For things that we can be doing. I'm the same way Nate is. It's like my list is longer than the hours than the day are. That's a given. Even if I decided not to sleep, I still wouldn't get the list done. And
Hmm.
that's not a feasible thing to go ahead and do. And most of the guys that and ladies that work for me in their businesses, it's the same exact way. I mean, there's like I've got like I perfect example is the people who clean our homes. So whenever we finish things up, so they're 2 weeks out. That's a given.
Yeah.
They're 2 weeks out. And there's times where I'm not able to give them 2 weeks because we went ahead and slammed the project out. And it's like, hey, I need you guys. And he's like, we're 2 weeks. You know how we stand. He said, if something opens up, I'll slide you in there. But he said, this is where we're at right now. And that means that they could technically be cleaning all the time to go ahead and get caught up to anywhere near where we all want them. And it just you've got to go ahead and take that. Like the one piece that pops into my head when we're talking about this is when Paige, who was also my daughter outside of being my project manager, whenever she was a senior in high school. Oh, actually, when she was a junior and senior, she was on the varsity cheer team. And that was one of the things that I made a commitment that if I'm in town, so I'm at her football games, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't care what else is going on. I don't care whose house is burning down. If
Hmm.
it's burning down, I'll call the fireplace on the way to the game because there's not much I can do at that point, anyways.
Yeah.
But the way I would be there, and it's you have to make that commitment to be able to go ahead and take care of the people in your life that are important to you. So and realize that it is a balance piece. And that if you don't take care of them and they don't help take care of you, you're not gonna be able to take care of your customers anyways. Oh,
Well, it's even one of those things where I look at it from my organization side, and it's something that I recognize, and I've got a couple project managers that they're just running nonstop. I mean, we're working 6, 7 days a week, and
right.
I have it in our company that we should only work 6 days a week, take off one day and
Hmm.
enjoy that day. But even so, I've got some of these project managers, they're just trying to get caught up, and
Yeah.
they're working 7 days a week, and I'm even having to force them to take vacation, and it's paid vacation because they
Right.
haven't taken off any time,
Hmm.
and it's like you have, and I have to look out for my people and understand like you
Hmm.
guys have been pushing too hard too long and you have to take a break. You
Yeah.
have to, because if not, you will have a mental failure and you will collapse upon yourself. And so anyways,
And,
I think it's a great piece.
and it's one of those things like whenever you say that, it's like I have a lot of the trades who will be like, well, yeah, we'll work Saturday and we'll work Sunday and stuff like that, that same way like you're talking about. And I have that same opinion that you do. While you think you're going ahead and helping yourself out, if
Hmm.
you don't take at least a day off, if not 2 days off, like in I'm a little bit different, my internal team. So
Hmm.
they're off on Saturday and Sunday. It doesn't matter what's going on. So, and that's just the way it is right now. And I tell all my homeowners that our hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So is what's in
Hmm.
the contracts. We'll ask you if we have guys that want to come in and do work differently and things like that. But that I do that for that reason is they get a break. And like some of my subcontractors that don't want to do that and to keep on working, I'm like, what you don't realize is you think you're making up ground. Actually, you're slower and your level of quality is going down because you
Going
haven't had
down.
that chance to refresh yourself. And it's like I would do that same thing like you're talking about with your project managers that don't take the vacation. It's like I can just keep on going. I'm the Energizer Bunny. I got this type of thing. And it's like you don't realize the difference whenever I started taking like the one we have a week every year at Christmas, we literally shut down between Christmas and right after New Year's for the whole
Mhm.
company. Whenever every year now, and we do that for that reason is that's time to spend time with family,
Yeah.
enjoy them, recharge, and when you come back from those types of things, it's like I'm operating at a whole different level. There's no sense or buts about it,
Yeah.
and that's it's
You have to
there's
recharge
always
the batteries.
yeah.
I mean, well, let's talk about the technology piece, right? You got a phone.
Mhm.
If you let it go all the way
Yeah,
down to very little, and then you just plug in for 10 minutes at a time, you're constantly going to be on, you
yeah,
know,
low battery.
low battery mode.
Mhm.
And you got to get to a point where you can recharge all the way up, get the battery all the way back to full
Mhm.
capacity so that you have the ability to take on the storm that's coming at you with all of the
Yeah,
things that you have to juggle in the projects. And so work-life
yeah,
balance is extremely important, and it also is an extreme challenge.
yeah, definitely. All right, my final one. I'm gonna say the skills gap, which basically means to me, and we've talked about this already in multiple other ways, is as people are what we call aging out of the industry, they're getting to the point where they're getting ready to retire just because of the fact that they're physically unable to do it, or they're done with it. They don't care to work in the industry anymore. And that's perfectly fine. That challenges they're taking those skills with them whenever they leave. And if they haven't been able to teach them, or it's been us, let's just say it's a small person company, though, that you've got, like my electrician, so is a two-person company. So right now, well, if he decides to leave, the other guy doesn't have the skills that the owner has, there's no way, which means that that skill gap that's there, it hurts them in multiple different ways. They're unable to be as productive in the field so as they could be, and that person's learning. That's part of the process. So, and if he's not there, so then that person isn't able to get very much done at all. And when that person leaves, so now there's no one there to even guide that ship and teach them and train them to be able to move forward. And that's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. And in the next 10 years, that's going to become a huge and monumental challenge. Without having processes set up, without having ways, whether using the technology to be able to do remote things like what we were talking about before. So there's going to be ways we're going to have to go ahead and figure those pieces out. Things like what Nate and I are creating with Concord University to be able to go ahead and have that training level there that's been captured, that people are able to go ahead and learn that and take that and implement that. So out in the field, that gives them a leg up. So to take care of some of that skills gap. And that's one of the reasons why we're going ahead and creating that piece is because we see that right now. The people who really knew it, like we saw there was a transition in 2000 between 2007 and 2010 where you had a lot of people who left the industry just because everything had gone down as far as the amount of work, and when they left they didn't come back. So whenever things
Yeah.
started to pick back up, and you saw a skills gap happen there, and that's one of the reasons, like whenever Nate was talking before, he's like houses just aren't built as well as they used to be, and part of that comes down to the materials, which we were talking about, and part of that also comes down to the skills gap on the labor side of things. And we're getting ready to what could be happen again in the next 10 to 15 years. That same thing happen again, just because those people who are knowledgeable are getting ready to step out. That's why the opportunity is huge in this industry. This is the time to get in, learn from the people who've been doing it for decades,
Hmm.
learn the tips and tricks, implement the new technology that's coming in. So in the new ways of doing things, and really you can establish yourself a completely different way to go about living your life as opposed to that normal college route. And you can have something that you look back. This is one of the things I always look back at, Nate. You go back and you look back over thousands of years.
Mhm.
What are some of the industries that were around at the beginning of time, so that are still around today? You know,
Construction is number one for me.
yeah,
It's like everybody needs a place to live,
yeah.
and then bartering for things is number two. You know,
Mhm.
there's a couple other ones in there, but I'm not going to name those.
You're not going to go into the prostitution one, Nate?
No, I'm going to stay out of that one.
Is that the one we weren't supposed to say?
Well, I don't know. That's another one. I just heard it's been around.
Oh, but with those pieces like that, there's certain things that have been around forever and will be around forever. And that's one of the great things, like Nate told his now father-in-law, future father-in-law at that point.
Yeah,
I'll always have a job. I'll always be
always.
able to take care of my wife, so your daughter, because there's always people needing something, whether they're renovating it, whether they're building it new, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial. So,
Always.
infrastructure, whatever the case is. Yeah. There's lots of different opportunities there. And it's the way to go ahead and look at things. And it's why I get excited about this industry. And I know, Nate, you're pretty much the same way. So we're so high on the industry itself.
And I love not being capped, and I love not having a ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, you're only restricted by yourself, and I think that's an important
Huge.
important piece of life. Is like, why would I want to put myself into a hole that I can't get out of?
Yep. I agree entirely. I like having any opportunity I get involved in. I want it to be something that the only limit on it is what I make out of it.
Hmm.
So is what it comes down to, as opposed to, hey, here's a ceiling. This is as good as you can possibly do. So that to me is no fun. Because I always like pushing that next level. All right. Well, we definitely went past the 16. We got to 18.
Yeah.
So we really went ahead and got it. So which is a positive piece. Um, so really, this is one of the things for all of you that have been listening to this. So if you got value from this, make sure to go back and listen to the rewards one if you haven't listened to that one yet, just to hear about the great things about the industry that go with the challenges we were talking about today. So, but if you got value from this, so make sure to share this. So with people you know, whether it's someone who's in the industry already, so someone who might be thinking about getting in the industry, just so they've got a clearer picture of what's going on before they make that decision. So share this, like this episode. So take 10 seconds to give us a review and a rating. We would love that. That goes ahead and helps spread this information out to more and more people. And that's what we're looking for, is to get this out to a broader audience. So we're looking to go ahead and know what other topics you might want to know about. So if there's other things like what we did with the rewards and what we did with the challenges, other topics in the industry, even if it's a specific industry. So you've got questions, go ahead and send those in. Nate and I are happy to go ahead and answer those. Might even do it in the future, like a Q&A type of thing where we get a bunch of those one-off questions and we just go ahead and do an FAQ type of podcast to go ahead
Absolutely.
and answer what you've been asking about. So, but put those in the comments. Let us know what those are. So, and also, you know what? One of the other big ways to help us out would be go ahead and take like a screenshot of this podcast and share it on your social media, wherever you go ahead and hang out, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So wherever it might be, share that on there, guide people here. You never know. Someone else may go ahead and get some huge value just from you putting it out there. So, and it may have been the way you found out about it in the first place. So go ahead and share the Builder Hacks podcast. We would appreciate that, to bring more people in to be able to create a different world. So, and as we always end out, so keep building our future, building America. Until the next time.